Join me today as I reveal the top 10 fiction novels that totally transformed my life. I'm not exaggerating. Will some of these have impacted you as well? Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things we enjoy. I'm Jim, the father of this show, and I'm glad you're joining me today for what I think is kind of a special episode. If you agree, or at least just enjoy it, don't forget to give us a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, we hope you will. So, I'm going to take you on a journey today, sharing with you the top 10 books that changed my life, all in positive ways. And how. I'm guessing many of these books will ring true with you as well. And if not these specific books, at least the impact that they had, that you'll know and remember books that had similar impacts on you as you've gone through your life. Let's consider these here now today. And I want to clarify these are the top 10 books making the impacts, but I don't have them ranked in any sort of order of which one's number one, which one's number 10. Instead, I've got them from earliest to latest of impacts. We start out with the earliest of these books, the first one to make a lifelong impact on me. And that was Jaws by Peter Benchley. Published in 1974, it's a thriller. This, of course, is the book about a small coastal town that's being terrorized by a man-eating great white shark, which leads to a desperate hunt to kill it before more lives are lost. Again, published in 1974. I read it in 1977. My age was still in single digits. I was a first grader. How in the world did this have a lifelong impact? Did it traumatize me for life? No, it did not. Here's the deal. My mom was a lifelong, immense reader. That's something she always had in the house, books. She loved to read. And she nurtured and shared and inspired that in me too. So I'm looking at her books one day, bunch of paperbacks sitting on the shelf, and I see this cool shark book. And I want to read it. And my mom said yes. Now, I was an advanced reader early on. I actually could read Jaws as a first grader. I did not understand everything I was reading. That's probably good. But I could take on the challenge of this adult paperback. My mom encouraged it. She let me. She gave me lots of other books to read, but this one, it hit. It stuck with me that I could read whatever I wanted to try to read. Thanks, Mom. That encouragement made all the difference. Mom's reading now whatever she wants to do, I'm sure, still. But she made a huge difference, transformed my life, letting me know books are for you and pursue whatever you want to try to read. My second one, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum, which was published in 1900. No, I wasn't around for that when it came out. The genre, of course, is fantasy. And you know this story. Dorothy Gale, swept away by a tornado to the magical land of Oz, where she embarks on a journey to find her way back home with the help of new friends and the wizard. If you've only watched the movie, you don't understand what you're missing. This book is so far superior to the movie. Now, it's very much a child book. I read it the summer between third and fourth grade. In fact, I read all 14 books in Baum's Oz series that summer. And the impact it had for me is it got me completely hooked on fantasy for my whole life. This whole magical world. And I'm living in it as I'm reading all through the summer, as I'm dreaming up my own stories about it, as I'm the one traveling along with Toto, a scarecrow, a tin man, a cowardly lion. Is such a spark for my imagination, and I couldn't get enough fantasy fiction after finding Oz. Huge impact. My third one, is Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rawls. Published in 1961, this is an adventure story specifically written for children, but more grown children. I read this as a sixth grader. It was actually assigned in class. A young boy and his two loyal coonhounds experience the joys and heartbreaks of life while hunting in the Ozark Mountains. I did not want to read this in school, but it was assigned, and I was a good kid, so I got to do my homework. And wow, this book impacted me powerfully because as I'm reading, and I was a good reader, I'm getting into the story, and I'm still always here for the story when I read something. But as I'm reading this story, it's emotionally impacting me. This is the first story that I can really genuinely say made me feel. I'm not sure I knew books could get you that much. I was interested in books. I enjoyed books. This one, I'm getting emotional. Maybe I cried. I don't cry now over books or anything. If I get a little wet around the eyes, I've been hit. But I think as a kid, I might have. There's a couple of scenes in this, maybe three, that just hit you in the feels hard. And just to know that something on a page that I could read was impacting me this way was massive. So to know that just a book can cause an emotional response of such depth, that was a treat and had a lifelong impact. I still look for books that can do that. My fourth one is The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, published from 1950 to 1956, and most specifically, the final book of the series, The Last Battle. The genre is fantasy. This is 7 interconnected stories that explore the magical world of Narnia, where children from our world play key roles in epic battles between good and evil. The Last Battle is not the best book in the series, but it does cover Narnia's final days and the ultimate triumph of good over evil. It's what comes at the end of the book that so charmed me and impacted me, because it speaks to what comes after. What comes after life? What comes after this world? And it inspired hope for something better. These books are written as a Christian allegory, and I'm a Christian. So it's giving a depiction of what life could be like when we move beyond this temporal world. Regardless of what faith background you follow, I hope you believe in something that leads you to something better after this life. And the way Narnia, the way these stories through Lewis's writing paints the picture, it's beautiful. It's something to not dread, not fear, but to hope for, to look forward to live our lives here now, but knowing no matter how bad things might get right now, there's a place prepared, there's a better thing waiting. So much better you can't even truly picture it. So I remember being impacted by this book in that way, and it's a hope I continue to cling to. My next book is Dragons of Autumn Twilight by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. Published in 1984, this is fantasy. A group of mismatched adventurers reunites to confront the rising forces of evil in the world of Krynn, guided by ancient prophecies, and it involves dragon lances. What is this book doing on this list? Well, it's just such a delightful book and holds a lot of nostalgia for me. The nostalgia comes from how it inspired my imagination to new levels. So you got to understand, at this age, when this came out, I was playing Dungeons and Dragons. I loved D&D. The early days of D&D, people. It was something I would spend hours on. I had been playing in middle school, in high school. I continued playing for a while in college. These books drop while I'm in high school, and it's Dungeons and Dragons brought to life. It gave me exactly what I wanted to read about and enjoy, and inspired even more that I could put into the D&D games that I was doing, which of course is what the marketing was all about with these books. But it worked. and it enriched my imagination even more. I still love Dragonlance to this day. There's so many of them I haven't read now, but the ones I have always been entertaining, and there are more that I hope to get to sometime. The next book of my 10 is a little bit deeper. Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein, published in 1961, and this is the first one on the list that's science fiction. In this novel, we've got a human raised by Martians on Mars who returns to Earth. And his presence and his way of interacting with those around him challenges humanity's beliefs about religion, culture, and politics. I was impacted by this book because it got me thinking deeply about life, about what we do with our lives, about what we as a society are doing poorly, and to aspire for something better, to want to treat people around me differently. I so wished that the kind of commune that the main character builds in this setting, that's just a utopia on Earth, I wish we could have that. I also, as in the book, understand it just really couldn't work because we're too flawed. But it can still inspire a person to want to be better, to want to make a difference around them, to make life better for those they impact. Those are things that I felt as I read this book. And again, anytime a book can give you new aspirations for how to make the world a better place, that's an impactful book. The next one I bring to you is The Stand by Stephen King, published in 1978, and then the unabridged, longer version, which I really love, came out in 1990. This is post-apocalyptic horror. After a deadly superflu wipes out most of humanity, the survivors align with forces of good or evil in a battle for the fate of the world. And this one, the impact it had on me was really about the difference that faith makes in a person. I don't necessarily mean faith in God, though for me that is true, but faith in the good, faith in each other, faith in the chance for things to be better. In The Stand, the power of faith is huge. People willing to step out in faith, to trust that there is a purpose and that they are a part of it. And those who are willing to do so make a huge difference for those around them. Even if they're not around to see all of that difference, they trust they've served a purpose. They've been part of a plan, and they're leading towards a better result. It impacts me knowing that I believe I am part of a plan, that I'm here for a purpose, and that everything that I do that helps others, that makes a difference in the lives of others, that gives people hope or improves their perspective is worthy. And I don't always have to see the results, but I can trust that I'm playing a role. I am making a difference. And life can be better because of the things I hold to, my values, my beliefs, my efforts to shine a little light into the world. Yeah, I get all that from The Stand. It's also got that darkness and the flu and all the stuff that's cool in the story, but the impact of the power of faith is huge. Then I bring to you one of my favorite series of all time. Starts with this book, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This was published in 1990 and is, of course, the first book of the Wheel of Time, an epic fantasy series that's just massive and incredible. This book starts out with young villagers and a few others who get swept up with them into a grand adventure where they learn they may be pivotal in the battle against the Dark One. The impact this has made for me lifelong is that it is my vehicle towards discovering fandoms and becoming part of them. When I first read The Eye of the World, it was just another great fantasy book for me. And I loved it. And I eagerly went searching for the next Wheel of Time book whenever it would come out. But eventually, it was through the Wheel of Time that I discovered There were online fandoms, people who love these books and share that passion with each other and get together for events. I've been to Jordan Con 3 different times and connected with people. I have friends from all over the world because of the Eye of the World and the series that it started off. This very YouTube channel exists because of the Eye of the World, because it was originally the passion and love for the Wheel of Time that caused Zach and I to try putting out content and then broadened to so much more. All of you that are watching this channel, it's because of the Eye of the World. And I love doing Fantasy for the Ages, and I love connecting with all of you and sharing the joy of all this nerdy stuff. I'd say the Eye of the World had a pretty big impact on me, and definitely for the good. I've got just 2 left here. This next one is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, published in 2006. This is grimdark fantasy. It's the first book of the original trilogy of the First Law series. This one is a brutal tale of flawed heroes and political intrigue, while we follow a barbarian, an inquisitor, and a self-centered swordsman navigating a world on the brink of war. Grimdark. And this impacted me for the positive? Yes, because it expanded my horizons. I had not read any grimdark before this. Okay, I'd read George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. That's like proto-grimdark. It's not quite grimdark, but it certainly shares a lot of elements with it. But The Blade Itself is something different. Joe Abercrombie, Lord Grimdark himself. It's just such a beautiful blend of dark humor and dark events, and no good deed going unpunished. And I have loved it. I'm actually just about to finish the final book in the First Law sequence now, The Wisdom of Crowds. It's been such a great ride. But because I enjoyed The Blade Itself and the other books in the first trilogy, I've gone pursuing other books of grimdark fantasy and dark fantasy and looked for these kinds of books that I hadn't really explored at all yet before. So this has changed my life for the better. It opened my eyes to new genres, subgenres of fantasy that have been very satisfying. Not inspiring me on ways to act, but certainly giving me new content to enjoy. The final one I bring to you, Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson. This is book 1 of his 10-book Malazan Book of the Fallen. It came out in 1999, and the genre is epic fantasy. Amidst a vast and intricate world, empires and gods clash in a tale of ambition, loyalty, and sorcery, with a primary focus on the Malazan Empire pursuing its ruthless conquests. This book impacted my life because it showed me, reinforced for me in a new way, the thrill of a challenge. Gardens of the Moon was a hard book to get through. Many people warned me off of Malazan, saying it's not worth the effort. For me, they were all wrong. I loved reading Malazan, and I'm still reading other books in the Malazan universe. I certainly finished the core 10 books, and it was such a ride. And some of the best epic fantasy I've ever read. Some of the best just flat out literature I've ever read. So this taught me, this impacted me. Don't let any book scare me off. Go after those challenges because you may be rewarded powerfully. Sometimes it's the hardest books to first get through that give you the deepest rewards. And I feel that way about Malazan. Thank you, Stephen Erickson. All right, those are my 10 books, each of them that will always now be special to me for the reasons that I've shared. If you've never experienced some of these books, even the ones written for children, you might want to go take a look. They all have something to add, some value. Now, how about you? What books have changed your life? I'd love it if you shared some in the comments. Tell me the books. Tell me your stories. Why are you saying this book? How did it impact you? I will enjoy reading every one of them, and I'll be sure to respond. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll talk to you next time.